Okay, I'd like to convene the Ways and Means Committee. We do have a quorum present, and just so everybody's aware, this committee is virtually always on TV. Not that we're always doing something that's that important, but sometimes we are, but we're the only show in town generally on Monday morning at 10 o'clock. So that just so you're aware that we do get some television coverage. And you might get a few emails as a result of whether somebody likes or dislikes whatever you said. So at any rate, that's informational. We do have a quorum present, as I mentioned, and then we have the minutes from our previous meeting. Representative Olson, did you care to move the minutes?
Yes, Mr. Chair, I move the minutes from January 14th.
Okay, the minutes are before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We're going to have a slight change in the agenda this morning, members. We had House File 491 scheduled a little bit later, but we have the Dakota County Attorney here that would like to make some comments on that bill, and to accommodate his schedule, we'll be taking that number 2 on the agenda. So we will begin as originally planned with House File 15. Representative Olson.
So I move that House File, we want to move the adoption of the
Division report.
Division report first. I move the adoption of the Judiciary, Finance, and Civil Law Division report on House File 15.
Okay, any discussion? That's a routine motion, members. Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Representative Stephenson, if you care to present the bill.
Yes, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I just want to briefly note that this
Excuse
is
me, I need to, we need to move the bill, however. We just adopted the division report.
Apologize.
So the chair moves the bill. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed, motion carried. Now, Representative Stevens.
All right, thank you, Mr. Chair and members of the committee. I just want to note that this is a difficult subject, and my conversation about it will be direct. Under existing Minnesota law, if a man drugs his wife and then rapes her while she is unconscious, he cannot be prosecuted for rape. We like to think of so-called marital rape exceptions as artifacts of history, as relics from a time when a woman was considered the property of her husband. But we still have a limited marital rape exception on the books today, and the bill before you would repeal that marital rape exception. As background, this bill was in omnibus prime last year. There are a couple of different versions of it in the Senate, one of which was passed out of the Senate Public Safety Committee in combination with a couple other provisions a couple weeks ago. The bill is also supported by MnCASA and the County Attorneys Association. And I think that for a lot of people, they think that perhaps this is an academic discussion. I'm here to tell you it's not, that sadly this happens. When you look at your fiscal note in your packets, you'll see that the bill has a cost of $42,000 in this biennium and $287,000 the next. That is entirely due to an increase in prison beds that will be necessary as a function of this bill. In fact, the Sentencing Guidelines Commission estimates that repeal of what's called the Voluntary Relationship Defense and Statute would result in 7 additional convictions each year. So that's 7 people who are unable to obtain justice right now as a function of this bill. I also want to briefly note a recent Court of Appeals decision, State v. Goswich, which was decided on December 31st of 2018. In that case, a man had sex on multiple dates with a woman who, and I'm quoting from the decision, according to the psychological assessments, functions at the mental capacity of a 7 to 8-year-old child. He was charged by the Brown County Attorney, but 6 weeks before trial, the defendant married the victim. The trial court then dismissed the case, referring to this statute. Fortunately, the Court of Appeals reversed, citing in part the possibility that interpreting the voluntary relationship defense as applying to marriages occurring after the fact would, and again quoting, permit or even encourage an actor to marry in order to avoid culpability for criminal conduct, re-victimizing the victim. The Court of Appeals was wise to think about the potential for unintended consequences after the fact marriages, but I think that this committee should consider how existing law still creates unintended consequences. And as an aside, that decision was 2-1. So there was one judge on that committee who thought that the dismissal should have been upheld. Both the Public Safety Committee in the House and the Civil Law Committee heard also from Jenny Thiessen, who lived that nightmare of seeing her chance at justice be denied because of a function of this statute. I can recall learning in law school about 17th century English common law principle that a husband could never be convicted for raping his wife because by consenting to marry, the wife hath given up herself to her husband. I'm sure all of us find those words repugnant. I think it's time for our laws to match our values, and I'm happy to answer any questions about the bill.
Okay, are there any questions? Seeing none, Representative Olson.
Can I renew the motion that House File 15 as amended be recommended be placed on the general register?
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. As I mentioned earlier, because we did have a couple of late arrivals, we changed the agenda, so we'll be taking House File 491 next. Representative Mariani here? Okay.
I move the adoption of the Public Safety and Criminal Justice Reform Finance and Policy Division report on HF 491.
Okay, any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. We need to move the bill. Representative Raffel.
Mr. Chairman, I'd like to do that at this time.
Okay, the motion is before us. And if you're prepared to present the bill.
I am. Good morning, Chair, Committee. Thank you for hearing House File 491. My name is Representative Lisa Demuth from District 13A, and I'm here to present to you this morning. As is customary, I understand there are treats that are expected at a first committee hearing, which I have provided, and the staff is sending those out. So thank you again for hearing this bill. The bill was first brought forward by Dakota County Attorney James Backstrom. There were 2 cases in Dakota County involving high school teachers and coaches who had sexual relations with 18-year-old high school students. Our current criminal sexual conduct laws make this conduct a crime if that student is 17, but when the student turns 18, it's no longer a crime. Felt that this law needed to be changed. Students are vulnerable in school with people in positions of authority like teachers and coaches. The fact that a student turns 18 does not change the dynamics of that student and teacher in the classroom or with that teacher and student if that student has a coach or someone else like that. Students can be easily manipulated, especially when the threat of needing to get good grades or furthering their education is looming over them. I served on the Rocori School Board for 11 years. I was unaware of this loophole. I also have 4 children. One of my daughters turned 18 the week before she started her senior year in high school. I was shocked that this loophole existed. So House File 491 addresses the issue. It's narrowly crafted to only apply to high school students who have not yet graduated and school employees, contractors, or volunteers who are in a position of authority over that student. The fiscal note came back that this bill would have no significant impact on caseloads and there would be no additional cost to the states. With your permission, Chair, I would like to introduce and turn it over to Dakota County Attorney Jim Backstrom.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I appreciate you moving the bill up this morning as well. It's my honor to be here today. I am the Dakota County Attorney. I've had the privilege of serving in that capacity for the last 31 years. This is a significant loophole in our law that I discovered, unfortunately, about 10 years ago when the first case crossed my desk. And I had to tell the victim and the victim's family that there was simply nothing we could do because the student had turned 18 and a teacher, in that case, I believe it was a coach, had manipulated that young woman into a sexual relationship. I had another case in 2017 that came out of Burnsville involving a teacher. Same situation, a student being 18. And these are just simply unconscionable situations for someone who's in a position of authority over a high school student to engage in a sexual relationship with that student. It's simply inappropriate, it's wrong, and it should carry the same penalty under the law as if that student were 16 or 17 years old. That's what this bill does, Mr. Chair and committee members. I believe it's an important change in our law, and it again will protect these victims who can be easily manipulated, as Representative Demuth said, into these relationships, and they can have long-term traumatic impacts on these young men or women. So I would ask the committee for your support, and happy to answer any questions.
Okay, are there any questions of either the author or Mr. Baxter? Well, seeing none, congratulations on 31 years of service. In the eyes of some of us, that's a short timer, but seriously, 31 years as a county attorney must be setting some sort of a statewide record, I would guess.
Getting close, Mr. Chair. Thank you.
Okay, if there's no further discussion, Representative Garofalo?
Renew the appropriate motion that needs to be made.
Yeah, well, as amended, yeah.
As amended.
I was reminded. Okay, any further discussion? All those in favor then signify. Oh, it's also a referral. I'm being reminded, I've got good staff here.
Yeah, there's a script somewhere that I'm supposed to be reading.
Okay.
Motion's memorized.
It needs to be re-referred to education policy, so it's,
Yeah, that's what I said, yeah.
okay. Very good. That's the question that's before us. Any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee.
Any more treats, and we're all going to go on a diet here, I think. Okay, so
We have, I agree with you.
is Representative Murphy here yet?
That's eating on TV.
Okay. Let's see, Mr. Simon, Secretary of State is here.
Did you bring treats?
Okay, this is House File number 14. Representative Nelson?
Mr. Chair, members, I move the adoption of the State Government Finance Division Report on House File 14.
Motion is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. And Representative Nelson?
I believe I move House File 14 is amended, be recommended to be placed on the general register.
Okay, that motion is before us. Representative Nelson on the bill?
Okay, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. Before last year's session and through the, before last year's session, the Secretary of State came forward and wanted to put money into election security after all the stuff that happened after the last election. And he was going to ask for that in his supplemental budget. Unbeknownst to us and to him at the time, the federal government passed new HAVA dollars, which they weren't expecting. I mean, when they did the HAVA dollars back in 2003, we were told at the state level that there was going to be no more HAVA dollars coming forward, that this was a one-time shot, and that so if you're going to do anything in the future, you're going to have to pay for it at the state level yourself. Well, surprise to all of us, last year the federal government, Congress passed, and the president signed a new HAVA bill, of which almost $6.6 million was going to come to the state to help us upgrade our election systems and to provide election security for our citizens of the state of Minnesota. There was a 5% match that was supposed to be part of this, and before this year's session started, the federal government already credited us with spending $110 million of that match. And then at the beginning of session, when they came up, they found that there was another $57 million that was credited toward that match. So that's $167,000 of the or the $330,000 that we needed to come up with for the match. So, that we don't need that money yet in the bill because hopefully through the regular session and through what's going on, that the Secretary of State will come up with more spending that will be accounted towards that match. Plus, we have till 2020 to make that match. This bill, the $6.6 million the Secretary of State is asking for, it was in last year's omnibus prime bill. The number last year was $1.5 million.
Mr. Chairman,
Yes.
Mr. Chairman,
I hear a voice, but I'm not, oh,
David.
Representative Davis.
thank you, Mr. Chairman. Several times there's been a reference to an omnibus prime. Could I get the bill number on that?
Does anybody have the, we'll have to look that up, Representative Davis.
Well, Mr. Chairman, I hope that we could be a little bit more accurate in our comments.
Representative Nelson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Thank you, Representative Davids. Anyway, the bill last year that was vetoed, the funding bill last year that was vetoed had this in it. When the second bill came forward that was signed by the governor, this money wasn't in it. The only thing we're doing here is authorizing the Secretary of State to be able to spend that money. We're one of 6 states that will have to approve federal dollars. The other 44 states automatically can spend those federal dollars when they get them. We're one of 6 states that have to approve that. Of those 6 states, we're the only one left that hasn't approved this money. Now, members, this money goes to, again, it's just to upgrade our cybersecurity on our voter records and our voting systems. And, Mr. Chair, that's what this bill does, is allow the Secretary of State to spend that $6.6 million. He has 5 years to spend it, and we should, allow this to go forward and get started so that we can protect our voters in the next election.
Okay, and Secretary Simon, would you like to comment?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Chair and members. I appreciate the opportunity to be here. I don't want to duplicate what Representative Nelson said, other than to thank him and also thank Representative O'Driscoll, Representative Nash, and others who, since last year, have been really instrumental in getting this bill before you. Just a little scene setting, but in the interest of time, I'll be short. We're here because of what happened in 2016. Minnesota was one of 21 states targeted by a foreign government. Our election system was targeted, and the good news is we passed the test and no one got in, and that's great. But we now know that the number one threat to the integrity of our elections is the prospect of some other intrusion, whether it's by a foreign government or someone else. And so we have to be vigilant about that. As Representative Nelson told you, last year Congress really stepped up, and the President signed a bill that gave the states a bunch of money. Our share was $6.6 million. We've whittled down the match from $330,000. It was 5% through our own office's action, and now we have that match down because we figured out a way to get credit for money already spent to about $167,000. I think that's right. So we're not asking today for any money. We're just asking for authorization to do what 49 other states have done. 49 other states have their money and had their money in time so that they could use it for the 2018 election. We did not. We were and are the only state that does not have all of its money, not just part of it, but all of its money. So when we left off last session, as you heard from Representative Nelson, the number was something else. We only were asking at that point for a portion of the 6.6, about $1.5 million or so. And that's because at the time, that's what we thought we could do in time for the 2018 election. Now, in the interim, there's more to report. So here's what we did in the interim. First, we formed a working group that was not required by state law or federal law. We just did it because we thought it was a good process and we wanted to be transparent. So we got together legislators and staff from all 4 caucuses, representatives of township government, city government, and county government, and their advocates here at the Capitol, IT experts, people from the disability community, et cetera. We met several times during the interim. We even broke into 5 different subcommittees, and the subcommittees then reported the result of their work to the main group, and then we adopted a basic menu, you might say, or roadmap about how to spend this money over 5 years. The second thing that we did is we didn't just sit around and sulk and mope that we were disappointed at not having received the money and having been the only state not to receive the money. Instead, we reached out to other partners who could help us with some Band-Aids to get us through the election. So we reached out to a national nonprofit called Democracy Fund, and they hooked us up with Microsoft, who was able to work with us to get us through the election, get us some software products in particular and other things that could last us through the election. for free, which was great, and we really appreciate them stepping up. And the third thing we did there in the interim was we worked very closely with the Department of Homeland Security on penetration testing and other security measures, where for 2 weeks, 1 week remotely and 1 week where they sent a crew of about 6 or 7 people to our office, they poked and prodded and probed and tried to find vulnerabilities and weaknesses, wrote a report for us, and many of the items that you see on the menu that we have suggested in terms of spending this money are direct recommendations for the Department of Homeland Security after having been here for a week and looked at our system. So I'm really heartened that both Speaker Hortman and Majority Leader Gazelka multiple times in the last few weeks have said to media outlets that they have named this bill as one that could be done early and on a bipartisan basis. So today is the next step in doing that. We have an election coming up in a shorter time than you think, in March of 2020. That's the next big statewide election. We'll have our first in a generation presidential primary. So it's really, really important that we get these projects going right away. We already lost almost a year, and these are really important things to make sure our system is as safe as it could possibly be. So we need the full authorization, not part of it, the full authorization to spend the whole $6.6 million. All we need is permission slip language. That's it. We're not before you today to ask for any money, just authorization language, so that we can use the funds that are literally sitting in an account at MMB for our use, $6.6 million, and we can't touch it. So with your help today and later on the floor, we'll be able to touch that money. So thanks for your time and attention.
Okay, any questions at this point? And we do have 3 amendments, so we can take a couple of questions before we move to the amendments. Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and thank you, Mr. Secretary. I always get a little bit squeamish when I see the language including but not limited to the following activities. And I wonder if there's anything that's not on the list in the bill that you are considering using those funds for.
Secretary Simon, I almost said representative, but you were a member of this committee.
I was.
You were in the House. So
Old habits die hard, Mr. Chair.
I might revert back from time to time.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. Yeah, we just mirrored the federal language. That's the federal language, exactly. So they had this sort of catch-all at the end. But as you can see, and I think the material is before the members, the menu that we have planned fits, I believe, pretty explicitly in those other categories. So we just use the language that the feds used in their appropriation of this money.
Okay, Representative Skowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and welcome, Secretary Simon. Good to see you again. Question would be for you, Mr. Secretary, and that is the match money that your department is using from 2018 and 2019 already expended. I assume those were expended in ways that are consistent with the spirit that the federal government requires in order for that to be a match. That being the case, and realizing those weren't likely the original intent of those dollars, can we expect that you won't need that amount of money in 2021? And the related question would be, are there additional dollars you won't need in 2021 that, as we look at your budget going forward?
Secretary Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Ruskowski. Very fair question. So, yeah, we wouldn't be here asking, or we're not here technically asking for any money, but all of this has to go through a federal body called the EAC, the Election Assistance Commission. Unless they say they count this money towards our match money, it doesn't happen. So we're not just declaring that it's the case. And I'll tell you exactly what it was for. We implemented something called multi-factor or two-factor authentication. You know it from your daily interactions, where it's not just a password, but something else, mother's maiden name, or sometimes it's a token. We use the token, something that somebody possesses. And we decided that it was an urgent need and we couldn't wait. And so we just absorbed those costs. We didn't pass them on to our partners in the counties, cities, and townships. Other states have done that. We didn't. We just decided to take the hit. And so we got credit for that against the match. But to your point about the budget, these are things, these aren't displacing things that we already do. These are things that the Department of Homeland Security has told us we need to do above and beyond what our current budget is. So I don't see this as money that, your question's a fair one, but I don't see it as money that we now don't need from the general fund because we got this HAVA money. This is stuff that the Department of Homeland Security is saying, you haven't been doing this before, states, not just us, every state. You got to start doing X, Y, and Z. And this wasn't in your budget before. This isn't something you had money to do before, but we're recommending that you do it.
So, Mr. Chair,
Okay, any further questions?
Mr. Chair.
Before we move to amendments?
just a follow-up, Mr. Chairman. Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Secretary. So, I mean, the question is about the match money that your agency used, your office used for this. It wasn't intended to be for a match to a federal grant. It was intended to be for your normal operations, and it appears fairly clearly to me that you used money that was freed up in your budget somewhere else in order to do this match. It suggests to me that you're getting more money in your agency than you need in an operating budget going forward. I'm just curious if this is all of the money, this $167,000 that you won't need going forward, or if there's more than that.
Secretary Simon.
Mr. Chair and Representative Drazkowski, got it. I think I understand the question better now. So, no, it's not money that we won't need going forward. It's still a fair question. But no, if you're asking how did we come up with the money to draw down our federal match, we just did what you got to do in any organization, private or public. There's other stuff that we didn't do. So there were other IT-related things that weren't security things that we decided, okay, we're going to have to take money from that. You know, it doesn't grow on trees. You in the legislature give us a set amount of money. We can't grow that. So, yeah, we decided to absorb the costs for multi-factor authentication, and other things had to suffer.
Thank you.
Okay, any other questions? Okay, we'll go to the amendments, and Representative Albright, I had two names, Representative Garofalo's and yours as potential movers of the amendment, so I think it must be you now that he's no longer.
It is, Mr. Chair.
Okay.
Thank you.
So what order do you want to take them?
Mr. Chair, I'd like to move the DE1 amendment first.
DE1, okay. Members, that's in your packets, that's the lengthy one. Representative Albrecht has moved the amendment. If you'd care to explain the amendment.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, and good morning, Secretary of State Simon. We heard this bill in State Government Finance. The language is also moving quite expeditiously in the other body, who shall remain nameless. But on Thursday of last week, the language that was passed in that, not to encourage us to do anything that other body does, but the provisions in there do recognize a couple of things that were supported by the OLA report from last year, principally a couple of reports, and those are outlined in subdivision 4 and subdivision 5 in the amendment. I think that we can all agree that our election integrity is of the utmost importance, and this amendment would recognize an expeditious path to complete the task on our side and speed it on its way to the governor's desk. That being said, I would stand for any questions or urge the author of the bill to accept it as a friendly amendment.
Any discussion on the amendment? Representative Nelson, any advice as the author of the bill?
Mr. Chair, members, I oppose this amendment, and not that I don't think that the voter integrity is important, but that this is an issue that needs to be fleshed out more in the Elections Committee. This would send this bill back to the Elections Committee, and again, delay the important work of cybersecurity that the Secretary of State needs to get started. And this was something that we can discuss in the Elections Committee that would come forward in an elections bill. But on this bill, I don't think it's appropriate to put it on because it would just add more delay to being able to get these funds in the hands of the Secretary of State to be able to start the important work of cybersecurity.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair,
Representative Albright.
just as a quick response to the author's consideration of the amendment, the mechanism by which bills can be passed through and from various committees or divisions, as they are called now, certainly warrants a quick and speedy consideration of this bill as amended in elections. So I think as we contemplate moving it to the full floor, as well as matching it up with other bills coming to match up from the House or from the other body. I don't know that that's entirely a, not to cast aspersion or to impugn the integrity of the comments, but I think it warrants making sure that we do it right by Secretary of State's own comments. Both the Speaker of the House as well as the Majority Leader are on board with the language, and I would just urge members, along with the author, to help us get this moving as quickly as possible. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I just wondered, since we have the Secretary here, I'm interested in his thoughts on this amendment and what it does, if he would be so kind as to comment.
Secretary Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Scott. Yeah, I mean, I'm generally supportive of this kind of language, and we've been working with the OLA on this. Actually, we're doing this right now, so even without this in law, we're already doing it as a result of the OLA report. But I understand the need or the desire to put it in statute anyway. I just agree with Chair Nelson that I think this would slow down the bill. So procedurally speaking, you know, every day that goes by that we don't get access to this money is a day that we can't get going on projects to make our election system safer.
Okay, any further discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed?
No.
Motion amendment defeated. Representative Albright, you've got two more amendments. Which one do you want to take next?
Mr. Chair, I'm going to move the A7.
Okay, the A7 amendment is before us. Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Members, the A7, and you also have the A8 in front of you, but I think I'm going to take up the A7 first just because it is in consideration of the timeliness. But we heard also, again, this bill in State Government Finance, and at the time that we heard it in State Government Finance, Representative Nelson raised some concerns about the impact that the state match would have on his omnibus budget bill that would be coming forth. Secretary of State in November did request the monies. They want this issue done and settled. This amendment would definitely accomplish that. I think it's important and incumbent, as the Secretary of State has also said, they've already expended a great amount of money, taken it out of their budget, they figured out where to get it. This is actually accomplishing the replenishment of those so that his budget isn't bushwhacked by doing what his charter has mandated, and that is to ensure the integrity of our elections process. So we're taking care of his budget right now and providing him with the funding necessary to take care of elections in a timely manner before we do rush into the 2020 elections. So I stand for questions and urge the membership and the author to consider it approved.
Okay, Representative Herdos.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And my question is a segue on to the comments made by Representative Albright. Secretary Simon, in a previous committee, you had discussed the revenue stream that comes to the Secretary of State, and you had made the comment, and I'm paraphrasing, I'm sure, that the Secretary of State is a net contributor to the general fund, that you generate more revenues than your budget. And with respect to this question about questions that have come forth this morning about money and budgets, could you clarify in a department such as that where you have revenues coming in, are you strictly held to your budget, or do you have the authority to use those funds and just contribute the residual that is not used into the general fund?
Secretary Simon.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and Representative Hertaus. No, I wish we had the authority to hang on to the money that you're talking about. No, we generate an excess of $22 million more than we cost because of the fees that we collect on the business side of the operation that you're very well familiar with. But no, that's not money that we can hang on to. That all goes to the general fund, but it comes out of our office.
Okay. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Long.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. In our division, when we heard this bill, a similar amendment was proposed, and it was noted that, as Secretary Simon said here, we don't need to spend any money until 2020. There is also the possibility that there could be additional money spent that would count towards this amount of match. And so it seems to me like in order to achieve the goal of moving this money as expeditiously as possible, this amendment would slow that process down. I've also noticed a bit of a trend of amendments like this that are asking us to spend money when it is not required, and not to cast aspersions or impugn integrity, but have noticed a similar trend of press releases coming out after amendments like this have been defeated, accusing Democrats of opposing the underlying bill or program, which I hope is not the intent here. And would just note also that we are still the only state that hasn't spent this money, and hope we can move forward with getting this money to the Secretary as soon as possible.
Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair. Mr. Chair. I'd like a roll call as well on this amendment.
Roll call has been requested.
And to the point of slowing it down, and since the question of motives was raised, I do also notice a kind of a glaring movement of what to question or to place into consideration future actions taken by the minority based upon amendments that might be offered. This is an institution that deals with the policy, not the personality or the motives of the personalities, Representative Long. So to your comments, the minority does not appreciate those. This is a bill, and this is an amendment that expedites the process of ensuring that the Secretary of State has the wherewithal to make sure that our elections have the highest level of integrity possible. Nothing more, nothing less. Thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Representative Nelson, any advice to the committee?
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and as I said in the State Government Finance Committee on which would be the 07 amendment, or the 08 amendment, which was similar to one that was put up in State Government Finance, is that we don't need this money right now. There's been money already for the match that has been, through the Secretary of State's normal actions of business that they normally do on elections, that has been credited towards the match. There may be more of that coming forward. Any money that's needed for that, we can add when we do the budget for the Secretary of State's office, which will come out of the State Government Finance Committee. So at this time, this amendment is not necessary. While I appreciate the spirit of this and the 07 amendment, putting it in the next fiscal year is helpful as far as this year's budget. But as we put our budget forward for the Secretary of State's office and from the State Government Finance Division, we will include whatever money is needed in there for the Secretary of State as he has identified when his budget request comes forward. So at this time, I don't think this amendment is necessary, and I would vote no.
Okay, roll call has been requested.
Yes.
Okay, clerk will take the roll.
Chair Carlson?
No.
Vice Chair Olson? No. Representative Garofalo? Representative Albright?
Yes.
Representative Bernardi?
No.
Representative Davids?
Yes.
Representative Dabney?
No.
Representative Dreskowski?
Yes.
Representative Eklund?
No.
Representative Hamilton?
Yes.
Representative Hansen?
No.
Representative Hausman? Representative Hertaus?
Yes.
Representative Hornstein?
No.
Representative Kresha? Representative Liebling?
No.
Representative Lilly?
No.
Representative Long?
No.
Representative Mariani? Representative Markart?
No.
Representative Nelson?
No.
Representative Noor?
No.
Representative Pulowski? Representative Poppy?
No.
Representative Schumacher?
Yes.
Representative Scott?
Yes.
Representative Torkelson? Representative Vogel?
Yes.
Representative Wagenius?
No.
Garofalo votes yes.
Garofalo votes yes.
Okay, being 15 noes and 9 yeses, motion fails. Representative Albright, there's one more amendment that you had in the package.
Mr. Chair, I will not be offering the A7 amendment. Excuse me, the A8 amendment.
I'm sorry, did you say you withdrew it?
I do.
Okay. We now have the bill before us. Representative Nelson, there was a person that contacted staff that made a request to make a brief comment. I don't know if that person is present or not, but we did tell him that he would have that opportunity. Apparently, either decided not to come or on a roadway somewhere. Representative Nelson, would you care to renew your motion?
Well, hopefully that gentleman's not in a ditch somewhere. Traffic this morning was kind of bad, but anyway, I renew my motion that House File 14, as amended, be recommended to be placed on the general register.
Okay, that motion is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed, motion carried. Representative Dettmer made a request. He apparently has in the audience some of the guards, and they have to be back to work. So if members will note, that would be House File number 58. House File 58 is the one that we'll take next. And now, Representative Dettmer, generally, we take most of our testimony in division, as you know. So if the guards want to comment, if they could do it briefly, because we have a full agenda. Representative Dettmer, then you're not on the committee, so is Representative Hornstein here? Okay, Representative Hornstein, would you care to move the division report?
Sure. Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of the Transportation Finance and Policy Division report on House File 58.
Okay, the motion is before us. Any discussion? Seeing none, then all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
The motion carried. Representative Hornstein? Or I guess on my notes here, yeah, Garofalo is not here, so I'll move the bill then, I guess. The bill is before us. Okay.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and committee members, and I'll keep my comments brief. And I looked at the notes of the correction officers. They have just brief notes too, but thank you for hearing the bill out of order. They do have to be back to work, so thank you so much. And the bill that you have before you is a bill that most of us as legislators wish we didn't have to bring forward. And we have men and women who serve, whether it's the military or correction officers, firefighters, EMT, all the different men and women that serve our state. Many times we travel along the roads of Minnesota, we see these signs up along the roads honoring their service. So what House File 58 does, it's a bill memorizing Joseph Gomm, a corrections officer who died in the line of duty in 2018. It designates a portion of Highway 695 and I-94 and Trunk Highway 36 as the correction officer Joseph Gomm Memorial Highway. And with us today, we have two correction officers who work side by side with Joseph, and they'd like to make just a few comments. And first of all, we have Tony Medellin.
Okay, and if you could identify yourself for the record.
Hello, Mr. Chair. Thank you for having us here today. I am Officer Tony Medellin. I've worked with the Department of Corrections since August of 2004. Most of that time I've been along the side of Joseph Gomm, who was a mentor and close friend of mine. I did respond to the incident on July 18th of 2018 where Joseph Gomm was murdered to the scene. It was the darkest day in the Department of Corrections. And it is the road, the 95 road, I travel to work every day. And to be reminded of that his death is not in vain, to see his name memorialized on that highway would be greatly appreciated by myself and a lot of my coworkers.
Okay.
And Mr. Chair, we have Dan Gorman.
Good morning. Thank you. My name is Dan Gorman. I'm an officer at Stillwater Correctional Facility. I also had the privilege of working next to Officer Gomm. July 18th, 2018 was the darkest day in Corrections, Minnesota Department of Corrections history. Joseph Gomm was murdered by an offender out in the industry area. To have his name etched on a road that the majority of the staff take to and from on a daily basis, I can think of no better way to memorialize a great coworker, a great friend, and a great brother that to have this honor. To honor his service and dedication to his coworkers, to the public, I can think of no better way. Thank you.
Okay, any discussion on the motion? Perhaps before we vote, I want to personally thank you for your service, and I think we were all aware of that tragic event, and it does tell us about the danger that you folks are in on a day-by-day basis. And so as one member of the committee, but I'm sure I'm speaking for the committee as a whole, we thank you for your service.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Seeing no further discussion, all those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried.
Thank you, Chair.
And have a good trip back to work, because roads are bad, I guess. Or I know. Okay, so we got, let's see, which one? House File 80, okay. And Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I move adoption of the Environment and Natural Resources Finance Division Report of House File 80.
Okay, motion is before us. Any discussion? All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye. Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Representative Hanson. I'm not sure, oh, there's Representative Murphy. I was wondering, I'd asked if she was here before. Representative Murphy, would you step forward? And Representative Hanson, would you care to move the bill?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I would move adoption of House File 80.
Okay, and just so members are aware, we will be hearing the bill today, and then I'll be laying the bill over. There are discussions that are going on between the House and the Senate leadership on this particular question. So we'll be taking it up once those discussions are concluded. But we will hear the bill, have a discussion of the bill, and then I'll lay it over. So Representative Murphy.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, members of the committee. House File 80 is the technical and corrections bill of a bill that passed in the last minutes of the 2018 session. And it was put together somewhere beyond anything that I had nothing to do with this, but as a new chair to capital investments, I inherited the technical corrections that needed to be done immediately and urgently. There are, in the bill that passed and that I voted for, and most of the people in this room voted for, there were projects and that were paid for from appropriation bonds from LCMR. And that is not the cheapest way to go. GO bonds are much cheaper. And so if we pass this technical and corrections bill, House File 80, we will save the state millions of dollars. We will also correct the changes that were not caught in the last minutes of the session. And some other technical and correction things. There's also an emergency for several of the cities that have started their projects expecting to receive the funding, and they are not receiving it because there's a lawsuit. And it's very important that, in particular, there's a toxic project that has to be addressed before the end of February in Anoka County. And so for those reasons, I ask for the swift passage of this bill. I understand what you said about where it's going. It has been, they received testimony in Capital Investment Committee and Environmental and Natural Resources Committee from all the people that are affected.
Okay, Representative Murphy, we have an amendment in the packet. It's the A19, and you referenced some housekeeping a couple of times.
Yeah.
So, Representative Hansen, would you care to move the amendment?
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd move the A19 amendment to fix the technical, to provide the technical corrections as Chair Murphy recommended.
Okay, any further discussion on the amendment? On the amendment, Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. The amendment, I guess it is the A19. I thought the 20 at the end. That's correct, so I just was going to correct the record, but you were correct.
Oh, it's A19-0020. Yeah. I just shortened it to the A19. Good point. Okay, any further discussion?
Mr. Chair, A19, the A19 amendment was brought to me by the Agency of Minnesota Management and Budget. They had 5 proposals that they wanted, and I accepted 4 of them, and they are in the A19 amendment.
Okay. Any further discussion? That'll get the bill in the order that we wanted in prior to laying it over. All those in favor signify by saying aye.
Aye.
Opposed? Motion carried. Okay, any further discussion on the bill? Representative Scott.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And I do have my city administrator here from Andover. That's where this project that Representative Chair Murphy referenced. And he is here. If you wouldn't mind obliging and having him just give a real brief testimony.
That's fine. If he could come forward and identify
Perfect.
himself.
Thank you. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Welcome to the committee, and if you could give us your name and your position and.
Yep. Jim Dickinson, City Administrator, City of Andover. Here to support the House File 80 and the A19 amendment. The city's in full support of the MPCA pursuing this project, and it's identified in there at $10.3 million, and we are very supportive of that. The WD hazardous waste pit, which has been identified, is the one pit in the state of Minnesota that the MPCA does administer. It does identify through some of their own reports, identify that it posed significant risk to human health and the environment. With that, we see the urgency in getting this done. We have a number of agencies working in partnership with the MPCA. We're thankful to be doing that. We have Anoka County, we have the City of Andover. We're working with ambulance service to work with the contractor at the point in time this project can get done. A lot of work that is being pushed forward right at this point in time, and we're really looking to see this project move forward as quickly as possible, not to delay any of that work that's been done at this time. As you're probably well aware, you start delaying work in process, it gets put to the side. And at times, do you know whether or not you can get those resources strategically placed where they need to be? And when I say that, we talk about such things as statewide all-hazard response team, also the statewide chemical assessment team. And part of this is sure, the contractor's got a lot of responsibility related to this, but the outside agency that will have a responsibility to deal with the emergencies is the city. And with that, we're prepping for that to happen. We do know that there's short-term protection systems that are in place, and again, those were never intended for long-term use. So again, that's why this is put as a level of urgency. So with that, I'd stand for questions. Otherwise, that's the basis of my testimony.
Okay, are there any questions of Mr. Dickinson? Okay, apparently not, but thank you very
All right,
much.
thank you.
Any further discussion before we, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair and members. The provision that was just referenced originally in the bill that was passed last year was $6 million, and then $4.3 million have been added and would be out of general obligation bonds. I think that's the important place to provide the funding. I know there are suggestions about taking it from the closed landfill fund. If we take it from the closed landfill fund, that I believe over 110 landfills all across the state are looking to that fund to help clean them up. So if that fund gets raided, that's going to impact landfills in greater Minnesota and the suburbs. So hopefully the general obligation bonds, in addition, that closed landfill fund, and I would defer to Representative Wagenius if I'm incorrect here, but that was designed for solid waste. And so the closed landfill fund was solid waste. Here we have a hazardous waste issue, so those general obligation bonds would be the appropriate expenditure to clean them up. So thank you.
Okay, any further discussion? Representative Goskowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I guess my question would be maybe for Representative Hanson. So these are LCCMR dollars, and we kind of know what happened here last year. I think the legislature last year believed that these projects did meet the legal description of proper use for LCCMR dollars. The authors and the interest groups who sued the state of Minnesota instead wanted the dollars to come from somewhere else, and where those dollars are going to come from obviously are the pockets of the taxpayers of Minnesota instead of the lottery proceeds that fund LCCMR dollars. And I think this is an important thing for Minnesotans to understand here. If you're in favor of not having higher taxes, the way that this was funded last year is a better approach. Now, my question for Representative Hanson is, has anyone with any credibility challenged the notion that these projects meet the legal requirements and the spirit of the LCCMR laws and constitutional amendments?
That was a question of you, Representative Hanson.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and Representative Drazkowski. I think the modifier that you put in there with any credibility is a subjective term. I may view people having credibility. I think we could reference the actual language of the Constitution. So there's the fiscal issue, which you referenced before, where the appropriation bonds are likely to be more expensive than the general obligation bonds. So from a fiscal management perspective, your general obligation bonds are cheaper, less expensive than the appropriation bonds. We don't have the exact number because the bond sale did not occur. In terms of the content, and I don't have the Constitution right in front of me, but in general it has protect, restore, enhance environment and natural resources in there. So I do not believe, and again, I would defer to members who were here when it was adopted, but I don't believe we've broke the seal in cleaning up a hazardous waste dump. My general knowledge on that, and this was before your and my time, reading Willard Munger's autobiography, is that there were certain things that were not supposed to be coming out of this, and that the fact of the statute being drawn prior to the amendment passing gave clear directions so that Minnesotans knew what they were voting on. But I would defer to Representative Wagenius on the actual language.
Representative Wagenius, would you care to comment?
Well, I just would emphasize what Representative Hanson said. There are two issues here: the expense of the bonds, which are more expensive and which are less expensive. But the fundamental and underlying issue is the respect for voters who voted for a constitutional amendment, and when they voted for the constitutional amendment, there was in place already a law that said this is what the money can and cannot be spent for. And so when folks sued the state, it said the base of the suit was the money was being spent for things that when the voters voted for it, they knew the money was not going to be spent for those things, and that's how they voted. So it goes down to the kind of basic respect for the voters and basic respect for the Constitution.
Representative Drazkowski.
Well, thank you both. It appears to me that as I look at these projects and review them, and we had the discussion certainly on the floor last year, each of them are projects that are intended to protect our natural resources. And that's the question I have. Are there any projects in here that don't protect, that aren't designed or intended to protect our natural resources? I think it's clear the answer is no. And so members and Minnesota taxpayers, the proposal being fueled here, if you will, by a far-left environmental group consortium that sued the state of Minnesota, is that they want to have even more and more monies to fund these same things taken from the pockets of Minnesotans instead of having it taken from the LCCMR dollars, where that money has to be spent on environmental protection initiatives. And these are environmental protection initiatives. And so that consortium of groups that came forward to promote their agenda was one that will extract even more money from your pockets to do even more and more and more projects. That, to me, seems to be their intent, because I don't see anything in here in these projects that really is not designed or intended to protect the resources of the state of Minnesota. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Gideon.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. One of the things, since we're discussing this bill and it's going to be laid over, I will make sure that I give to the committee for sharing the actual language in statute that was there when voters voted for the constitutional amendment. And the statute said the money will not be spent for certain things, including hazardous waste, including wastewater treatment. So the issue here is, do we respect our voters? Do we respect our Constitution? It has nothing to do with calling people names. It is our going back and looking at our Constitution. I'll make sure that members have that language before our next meeting.
Okay, thank you. Representative Vogel.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And looking at this spreadsheet of sorts, I was just curious if somebody could could explain what the impact is going to be on the general fund. I've always been concerned about our debt service, and I'm not necessarily opposed to what we have to do here, unfortunately, but I also do want to clarify what kind of an impact is this going to have on the general fund?
Okay, I think in anticipation of the question, Mr. Lee was close at hand. Mr. Lee, and if you could identify yourself for the record.
Mr. Chair and members, my name is Andrew Lee from House Fiscal Staff. If you look at the general fund debt service tracking sheet, that's the single page landscape format spreadsheet. At the bottom of the spreadsheet on lines 19 through 22 shows the impact of general fund debt service change. So when MMB does the forecast the base budget, they assume a certain level of borrowing every year. And so MMB, using a 10-year rolling average for even and odd numbers years, has a certain assumption of how much the legislature will bond for in each year. And for the odd year, the year that we're currently in, they assume that the base bonding bill will be $265 million in GO authorization. Since this is quite a bit less than that, on line 20, there's an assumed savings. This is just assuming that this is the only bonding bill that passes this year, and that there isn't an additional one. But then also on line 22 shows the difference from if no bonding bill gets passed this year. So essentially if no bonding bill gets passed, then this is an additional approximately $10.25 million over the biennium in general fund debt service.
Thank you, Mr. So just to clarify, if indeed there's an assumption that the $265 million is going to be bonded in addition to this, it would cost the general fund another little over $10 million over the biennium?
Mr. Chair and Representative Vogel, no, so the base budget assumption would be on line 13. So that's assuming that there is all the previous debt authorized plus $265 million. So if you'd like a breakout of if just the 265, what's the difference from zero? I'll have to get back to you on that, but it would be a little bit. It would be probably. Well, I'd have to double check. It would probably be in the. It would be more than the 10 million that's at the bottom of this tracking sheet.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair, and I don't want to get too deep in the weeds on this today, but I do think that we need to review what this is going to do to our general fund payments, because I believe the other one with the appropriation bonds was supposed to come out of a different fund, not the general fund, unless there was going to be a transfer. So therefore, we're making a change to the general fund on this, and I'm not opposed to necessarily following through because I realize there's difficulties, people waiting for money, but I do think that we need to have some serious discussion on how much we might decide that would be appropriate for geo-bonding this year so that we don't impinge on the general fund too much. Thank you.
Mr. Lee, I have a quick, very general question, because we never know exactly what the interest rates are going to be until the bonds are issued. But as a general rule, appropriation bonds are more expensive, as I understand it, than general obligation bonds. Is that correct?
Mr. Chair and members, I think MMB tends to have that assumption. I shouldn't speak for them, but a lot depends on the revenue stream. So general obligation bonds are backed by the full faith and credit of the state, which means that if the legislature were ever not to appropriate debt service for general obligation bonds, the state auditor has the constitutional obligation to levy a statewide property tax to make good on the payments to general obligation bonds. So that's what full faith and credit means. Whereas appropriation bonds are usually a statutory promise that in statute the legislature says that they will continue to make this appropriation. The legislature, however, can change the statute at any time. They're not constitutionally restricted from doing so. Of course, changing that statute would likely mean that the state would have difficulty in terms of selling future bonds. So there's that distinction between full faith and credit and a statutory promise. That in theory, the full faith and credit would attract a lower interest rate because of the guarantee. Another factor is the source of the funds, that the general fund is pretty large. But you can't exactly know what the interest rate would be until the bonds are sold.
Yeah, so. That's why I said as a general question, Mr. Lee, but because it is the full faith and credit, generally, I think it would be pretty safe to say that the interest rate would probably be lower than a statutory obligation, and therefore there would be some potential savings. Very good. Like that, Representative Albright.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Mr. Chair, I'm not sure who to direct this question to. It might be Mr. Lee or it might be someone else, but I'm just wondering, in typical cases where there is a question in terms of the bond authority between agencies, or in this case, taking it out or enacting a special appropriation bond versus general obligation, I'm just wondering if bond counsel or the bond houses have been consulted and if they've weighed in on the appropriate nature from a legal standpoint, upon what basis this would stand, or how they would view special appropriation bonds in consideration of general obligation for these purposes.
Mr. Lee, do you have any information on that?
Mr. Chair and Representative Albright, I think I would have to have that question asked to MMB.
Mr. Chair, just for the sake of brevity, I'm wondering if we could request MMB to weigh in on this and provide a bit of a memo or comment back to the members of the committee on that point.
Is there anybody from MMB that's here? Apparently not, but we can perhaps request that information then.
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Representative Murphy?
Mr. Chair, MMB did testify in our committee quite extensively about the various kinds of bonds and what happens with rates going up and rates going down and borrowing costs and all that kind of thing. And I have also had several conversations with MMB about, with various people at MMB about where we're going. And I'm led to believe that there will be recommendations in the governor's budget when that comes out, and the forecasts, and the new forecasts when that comes out. But I welcome you to discuss this, and our committee will continue to discuss the questions that are being brought up today, because we are going, I believe that we are going to pursue a capital investment bill in our committee for 2019 and for 2020. And the word robust has been used.
Thank you. We've got several people, and the clock is running, so if we can keep the questions brief. Representative Hamilton is next.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Representative Murphy or Mr. Lee, I see on the general fund debt service, the list of projects, number 8 is the Lewis and Clark Water Project. That is going to be changed, I believe, from appropriation bonding to GO bonds. My question is, will there be a delay in releasing those funds towards the projects by doing that?
I'm not sure, it looks like two of you are about to answer, so go ahead.
Mr. Chair, Deb Dyson from House Research, and Mr. Lee can confirm this, but the list of Lewis and Clark Water Project on here is a list of outstanding appropriation bonds. There's nothing in the bill that would change the Lewis and Clark appropriation bonding to GO because it's not eligible for GO.
Okay, so then
Yeah.
it's no, right?
No.
Okay, thank you. Thank you, Mr.
Okay,
Chairman.
Representative Drazkowski.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. I'm wondering, is there anybody from the Attorney General's office here? I see the room is full of lobbyists and agency people, but I don't know. I'm curious about the lawsuit, Mr. Chair. Is there anybody here prepared to talk about the lawsuit and the effort by the Attorney General to defend the state of Minnesota from the lawsuit that precipitated the position we're in?
I don't know if anybody is here from the Attorney General's office or not, and I'm not sure how much they could comment about the lawsuit, quite frankly, being that it's before the court currently, but I don't think, is there anybody from the Attorney General's office here? Apparently not. Representative Drazkowski?
I'm wondering, Mr. Chair, if you know, has the Attorney General's office become involved in the litigation to protect the state of Minnesota from the lawsuit? Do we know if they are or not, or if they have?
Representative Drazkowski, I have no background on that. I don't know if that issue came up in the division or not. Representative Murphy is saying no. Representative Drazkowski?
That's what I thought the answer was, Mr. Chair. Well, members, we have the legislature and the governor signed a bill last year, and the Office of the Attorney General has not even stepped forward to protect the people of Minnesota from this lawsuit. Members, I find that problematic, that we have an Attorney General's office, whether the current Attorney General or the previous one, who selectively decides whether they're going to enter into litigation and protect the people of Minnesota. This is a big deal. And apparently something other than following through with their job is dictating their lack of involvement here, and this member finds that very troubling. Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Thank you, Mr. Chair, and just a comment I would like to draw members' attention to with respect to this general fund debt service spreadsheet that we all received. I'd like you to just notice that in the current biennium versus the next biennium, that there's about a 5% growth rate, nearly 5%, in the amount of total debt service on capital projects. And since I've come here, I remember that the debt service was closer to $1 billion. Now we're at $1.4 billion in a biennium, and it used to be that we would just do bonding in even years. What I want to make the point is that we continue to grow our debt, and most constituents don't understand. They think we have a general fund budget that is balanced, but they don't understand that this debt continues to grow. And as each year and each biennium our debt grows and the debt service on it grows, there's less money available to do other projects. And to that end, and lastly, at $1.472 billion projected for the next biennium, that is a dollar amount that exceeds the amount of a bonding bill that we generally pass. So we could be paying cash if we didn't let this debt continue to grow. Thank you.
Okay, Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And Representative Drazkowski, I believe it was about 2 weeks ago, the executive branch asked for a stay in this and a 6-month stay to give the legislature the time to fix the error. I don't have that information in front of me, but we can find that and get that to the committee. So I think that what's happening, rather than being in court and doing this right now, there is a request to stay the case and give the legislature the time to fix this.
Okay, Representative Davids.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chair. I'd like some clarification from Representative Hansen. Said we would have time to fix the error. What error are you referring to? I'm not aware of any error.
Representative Hansen.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. And the opportunity to fix which Representative Murphy has of having this as a general obligation bonds instead of appropriation bonds, I believe, and Mr. Representative Davids, I did vote against the bonding bill because I felt that it was unconstitutional at the time, and it's also fiscally irresponsible. So that's what my perception of the error. Let me rephrase that the executive is looking for an opportunity to make a change from the appropriation bonds to the general obligation bonds.
Well, thank you, Mr. Chairman and Chief Justice Hansen. There was no error. Let's set the record straight here. There was no error. There's a bill. It passed. The governor signed it. No error.
Okay, Representative Garofalo.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Just wrapping things up. First of all, I want to thank you or whoever's idea it was on the other side of the aisle to lay this bill over before sending it over to the Senate. I think it is wise to make sure that before we should not be sending any capital investment bill, attempt to send any capital investment bill over to the Senate until there's a written agreement with the Senate. I think that was a wise choice and want to thank you for that. Second point, and I've heard a couple of people point to this, and I don't think I'm giving any breaking news here, but there's not going to be a supplemental bonding bill this year. People keep talking about this. I know what's in the forecast and what's listed, but I'm hoping that people don't actually think that this year, with a budget surplus, that there's actually going to be, outside of an emergency or a situation like this where there's some legality blocking up a court action blocking a very urgent needed project, there's going to be a bonding bill this year. I hope that's not. I hope I'm not surprising anyone by telling you that, but that ain't going to happen. Next year's the bonding bill, and that's when that'll get taken care of. But thank you again, Mr. Chairman, for laying this bill over. That is a wise course of action. Thank you.
Okay, and that ends the discussion. We're at the bottom of the list. So as I mentioned, House File 80 then is laid over for further discussion. Thank you very much. And by way of just a couple of announcements, the Various referrals that have been made to the divisions were in your packets. Those are also posted online. And then, in addition to that, we will not be meeting next Monday. There will be a presentation by various tribal representatives on Monday. So that means that we may, depending on what's coming out of the divisions, meet sometime next week, but it will not be at a regular 10 a.m. or 9:45 a.m. Meeting time on Monday. So with that, meeting adjourned.